Welcome back to the deep dive. I hope you are somewhere really comfortable right now because today we are settling in for a conversation that, and I mean, I don't say this lightly, it might genuinely change the way you look at your own living room floor.
It really might. Yeah.
So we're kind of turning down the lights a little bit, maybe grab a warm drink, and we're getting ready to explore those corners of the human psyche that we usually keep hidden in the dark. It's going to be a bit chilling, definitely a bit revealing, and honestly, hopefully a little bit liberating too.
Oh, absolutely. The material we have in front of us today is just incredibly rich. It touches on the mundane, like literally cleaning your house, and it connects it directly to the most profound spiritual and psychological health of the individual. It's practically a masterclass in how the physical and mental just aren't separate things.
Exactly. But before we jump into the deep end here, we do have a little bit of housekeeping to do ourselves. I need to make a mandatory disclaimer for you all listening. This podcast is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes. We're here to learn, to explore, and to share. We aren't doctors. We aren't prescribing anything. We are just analyzing a really fascinating text.
Right, and the source material we're exploring today is it's truly special. We are looking at session 320 of the Early Sessions, Book 7 of the Seth material.
And for those of you keeping a chronological record at home, the date of record for this specific session is Monday, February 20, 1967. And the time was exactly 9 p.m.
Yeah, and it's really worth noting the context here. Usually in these sessions with Jane Roberts, who is the medium, and her husband Rob, there's, a bit of a warm-up.
Like those envelope tests.
Exactly. Sometimes they do an envelope session where they test clairvoyance by having Jane guess the contents of a sealed envelope. But in this specific instance, there was no envelope session. Seth, the personality speaking through Jane, he just went straight into the good stuff.
Right into it. And just to orient everyone, because I know the names can get a little tricky if you're new to this deep dive, when we say Rupert, we are referring to Jane Roberts, the medium. That is her entity name, according to Seth. And when we say Joseph, we are referring to Rob, her husband, who is the one transcribing the notes.
Precisely. So when Seth addresses Rupert, he is speaking directly to Jane's psyche.
Okay, let's unpack this. I really want to start with something that I think everyone listening can relate to, even if they absolutely dread it. Spring cleaning.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I personally hate house chores. If I could just outsource scrubbing the floors for the rest of my life, I'd be a very happy person. But this session starts with a concept that actually made me pause and rethink my entire attitude toward a mop and bucket.
It is a totally surprising opening. You're expecting this high-level metaphysics, maybe discussions of the soul or the afterlife, and Seth just starts talking about scrubbing rugs. But there really is a method to the madness.
So our mission for this deep dive is to explore a few things. How what we call discipline might actually be a trap, why self-denial can literally make you physically sick, and honestly, my personal favorite, why buying yourself a sweater might be a profound spiritual act.
That is the headline right there, the spirituality of the sweater.
Right. Let's get into segment 1, the ritual of house cleaning. Seth starts off talking about environmental influences and how they can be cleared up by the house cleaning ritual.
Note the word ritual there. He doesn't just call it a chore. He's elevating the act. He specifically mentions disinfectants and the symbolic chase after germs.
I love that phrasing so much, the symbolic chase after germs. It sounds like he's implying we aren't just, killing bacteria here.
He is implying exactly that. In our modern world, we tend to think of germs as purely biological threats. But Seth suggests that for the psyche, they represent something else entirely. He says these things serve as a symbolic but helpful aid in ridding the atmosphere of the idea of illness.
The idea of illness, that is fascinating. So when I'm spraying that lemon-scented cleaner on the kitchen counter, I'm not just wiping away crumbs, I'm wiping away the concept of being sick.
In a way, yeah. Think about the smell of a disinfectant. It triggers a whole response in us. It smells clean. It smells safe. Seth explains that actions like throwing the windows open and thoroughly airing the rooms aren't just about getting fresh air. He says such actions simply bring to a sense level your inner intentions and serve to reinforce them through the physical actions involved.
Bring to a sense level. That seems to be a really key technical phrase for him here. Can we break that down a little?
It's crucial. We often have these vague intentions floating around in our minds. I want to be healthy, I want a fresh start, I want to clear my head. But they remain abstract. They're just thoughts. When you physically open a window and you feel that cold air rush in, or you physically scrub a tough spot on the floor, you are acting out that intention in the physical world. You are translating that abstract desire into a concrete reality. You're basically telling your subconscious, look, I am doing this. I am clearing this out.
It makes it real. It validates the inner desire for the physical body.
Exactly. It bridges that gap between the mental and the physical. Seth specifically advises Rupert Jane to scrub his rug. He says for him, rugs have a certain significance in this respect, and he also mentions airing the bedding.
That's interesting because rugs and bedding are things that hold on to stuff. They hold on to dirt, dead skin, but symbolically, they hold on to the residue of our daily lives.
They ground us, we walk on the rug, we sleep in the bedding. Clearing them is a literal way of resetting the foundation.
But he does add a caveat, doesn't he? He says something like, as long as you understand the reason behind these actions, you will not overestimate them.
Right, and this is important. It's not magic dust. The bleach isn't holy water. If you just scrub the floor while you're miserable and complaining, it's just scrubbing the floor.
Yeah, it's just a chore then.
Exactly. But if you understand that you are using the physical act to reinforce a psychological cleansing, then it becomes a powerful tool. It's the intent coupled with the action that creates the shift.
So if you're sitting there feeling cluttered mentally or feeling like there's a kind of sickness in the air of your life, the actionable advice here is literally to go scrub the rug, air the clothes on the line.
Brush the animals.
Brush the animals. Yes, I forgot he says that too. Rupert should brush his animals. It's all about grooming the environment to groom the soul. It's about taking care of the biological sphere around you.
It creates a fresh slate. It signals to the universe and to your own deep mind that you are ready for health. You're preparing the space for vitality. And that really leads us directly into why they needed a fresh slate in the first place, which brings us to the next point.
It sure does. Segment 2, the war on treats. Or, as I like to refer to it in my head, why we are so mean to ourselves.
This is a profound part of the session, and frankly, it's a bit of a mirror for anyone listening. Seth analyzes the personalities of both Jane and Rob, and he notes a very specific shared trait between them. He says both of you lean towards self-denial, sometimes too acutely.
Ouch. I feel seen. I think a lot of us do.
It's a cultural epidemic. We constantly equate discipline with virtue. If you are denying yourself, you must be good. If you are suffering a little bit, well, you're working hard. But Seth flips this on his head completely.
He talks about the inner child or the animal spirits. He basically says that if you keep denying yourself treats, a literal part of you starts to feel worthless.
Exactly. Listen to the logic here because it's really impeccable. He says, if a portion of you feels it does not get treats, you see, it imagines that the whole personality does not consider it worthy of any consideration.
That is heavy. It's not just, oh, I didn't get the cookie. It's, I didn't get the cookie, therefore I am not worth the cookie, therefore I am not worth anything.
It's an accumulation of rejection. Imagine a kid pulling on your sleeve asking for a small thing, and you just ignore them. Do that 1,000 times, and the child stops asking. But they also stop trusting you. They start to resent you. And that child is inside you.
And Rob, Joseph isn't even aware he's doing it. Seth says Jane usually pays it no mind because she thinks ignoring that desire is just discipline.
Right. She frames it as a virtue. I am being disciplined by not buying this thing. But Seth calls it ignoring the innate, independent, childlike desire for treats. I love that phrasing. It validates that wanting a treat isn't a weakness, it's innate. It's independent of your logic.
And here's the kicker, and I think this is the most critical insight for anyone listening who struggles with guilt. Seth says a grudging indulgence is perhaps worse than none, however.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That really hits home. You know when you finally buy the thing or you eat the cake, but the whole time you're thinking, I should be doing this, I can't afford this is bad for me, I'm being lazy.
It's almost like you're eating the guilt right along with the cake.
Seth implies that is actually more damaging. The spirit behind the indulgence is what matters. If you do it with guilt, you are poisoning the treat. You are consuming the calories or spending the money, but you aren't receiving the psychological nourishment.
So you're getting the cost, but literally none of the benefit. It's the worst of both worlds.
Precisely. And in this session, the humor comes in a rather dark way. They had apparently come up with a plan for dinners out and outings. But Seth notes that this plan was only adopted by Rupert as an emergency measure.
Haha, yes. It's like break glass in case of total mental collapse, then go to a restaurant.
Medicinal dinners.
I just love the idea of a medicinal dinner out. Like, honey, we have to go get pizza. It's a safety measure for my soul. Otherwise, I'm going to crack.
But it's true. Seth argues that this is a terrible strategy. If you only treat yourself when you are on the brink of collapse, you are training yourself to collapse in order to get a treat. Seth says they need a modified version of this plan to serve as a steady and constant safety measure.
Preventive maintenance, not emergency repair.
See, exactly.
Yeah.
Seth argues that while the dominating portions of their personalities, the adult, responsible, working parts are willing to go without, the other portions feel totally disregarded, and you cannot afford to deny them even token recognition.
Token recognition, that's such a low bar. Just a little nod, a little treat, a coffee, a magazine.
Seth describes what Jane had been doing as starving the spirit. He says, and I really want to quote this because it is just so powerful. He says, he tried to make it thin enough to disappear. He tried to douse his normally vital animal spirits.
Make it thin enough to disappear. That is a chilling description of self-denial. It's an attempt to erase a fundamental part of yourself.
It's like existential anorexia.
Yeah.
You are trying to starve the part of you that wants, the part of you that desires, hoping that if you starve it enough, it will just vanish and leave you as this perfect, stoic, disciplined machine.
But that never works.
It never works. Seth says this was a misguided attempt to force his personality into what Seth calls the ego's idea of spirituality.
The ego's idea of spirituality. So the ego thinks spirituality means suffering, starving, and stripping away pleasure. And Seth is saying, no, that's just your ego trying to control everything.
Real spirituality, Seth implies, involves the whole self, including the animal spirits, including the child. And now, because Jane has been trying to erase this part of herself, the body and those animal spirits are in full revolt. They need extra attention.
Which leads us to a very specific, very relatable story that Seth deconstructs. We're calling this segment 3, the sweater incident.
This is a perfect case study. It's almost like a parable for modern life.
So let's set the scene for you guys. It's Friday. Jane's books, copies of her own books have arrived, but they haven't been paid for yet. And she had lost some money earlier in the week, so financial stress is already heavily in the air.
Right. Very high tension. The backdrop is I lack money, I owe money.
On the way to work, she sees some sweaters she really wants. And significantly, Seth mentions they were meant to replace her mother's sweaters.
That is a crucial detail we have to come back to. The mother figure looms large here. Replacing the mother's sweaters symbolizes stepping into her own identity, replacing the old, painful heritage with something new and self-chosen.
So she sees the sweaters. She wants them. But she denies herself the purchase because she feels guilty about the lost money and the unpaid book.
Standard responsible adult behavior, right? I shouldn't spend money I don't have, or so we think.
But then the spiral starts. She accepts a ride home from someone.
Which seems innocent enough. Just a favor.
But Seth points out that by accepting the ride, she deprived him of an opportunity to change his mind and buy the sweaters then. She physically removed herself from the possibility of the treat.
She trapped herself in her own decision of self-denial. She literally locked the door on the sweater.
And in the car, things get even worse. She feels guilty because Rut has a stiff neck, so she's worrying about his pain taking on his burden. Then the driver takes a route that makes her angry.
But she can't say anything. She's a guest in the car. It's a free ride. You can't complain about the route when you're getting a free ride, right?
Yeah.
So she just swallows the anger.
And then, on top of all that, the driver tells a story that upsets her early sexual feelings.
So now we have a massive cocktail of suppressed emotions. Financial guilt, self-denial of the treat, worry for her husband, suppressed anger at the driver, and triggered sexual discomfort.
It's a pressure cooker. And she's just sitting there smiling, nodding.
And she has no outlet at all. She didn't buy the sweater, so there's no relief there. She can't yell at the driver. She can't fix Rob's neck.
And what happens later that evening? They have a discussion about torture.
Of all things, a theoretical discussion about torture.
And Seth says this frightened her because her withheld anger and aggression found the talk most satisfying.
That is fascinating psychology. When you repress your own aggression, the aggression that wanted to buy the sweater, the aggression that wanted to yell at the driver, it doesn't go away. It looks for a hook. It resonated with the violent imagery of the torture discussion. And that scared her. She thought, why am I enjoying this dark topic?
So she tried to deny that feeling too. She clamped down even harder. And the result? Physical symptoms. Her neck started hurting. He started developing symptoms similar to what Rob was feeling and, more disturbingly, similar to her mother's arthritis.
It's a direct line. The refusal to buy the sweater wasn't just a budget decision. It was the first domino in a chain that led to actual physical pain.
Connect the dots for us here. How does not buying a sweater lead to a literal pain in the neck?
It's about energy flow. The impulse to buy the sweater was an impulse of self-love, of assertion. I exist, I want. By crushing that impulse, she signaled to her subconscious that she was unworthy. That creates tension. Then, when anger arose in the car, She crushed that too. The energy has to go somewhere. If you don't express it outwardly by buying the sweater or speaking your mind, it turns inward. It attacks the body. The pain in the neck is quite literal. The tension she swallowed settled right in her musculature.
It really makes you wonder how many of our aches and pains are just unbought sweaters and unsaid words.
Seth would argue a highly significant amount. We somatize our psychological denials.
This brings us to the deeper layer. Why was she so prone to this self-denial in the first place? It wasn't just the money. Segment 4. Roots of the issue.
We have to go back to childhood. Seth is very clear here. You don't develop this level of self-denial overnight. He talks about compulsive behavior established at an early age.
He mentions the ritualized activity serving as a substitute security framework.
The core motivation was fear, specifically fear directed against the mother.
And religion gets mixed in here too, doesn't it?
Yes. Seth mentions the crucifix and rosary being used as part of a safety ritual.
So you have a child who is terrified of their mother, using religious objects to try and create some sense of safety.
Seth describes it as creating a safe circle. The compulsive behavior, maybe arranging things a certain way or praying a certain way or tightly holding the rosary, created a small, defined circle in which the child felt safe.
Mhm.
If I stay in this circle, the monster can't get me.
But circles cut both ways.
Exactly. Seth says it was meant to keep harmful influences out, but is also meant to keep harmful influences in.
That is the ultimate paradox. If you build a wall to keep the bad guys out, you also lock yourself in a prison. You lock your own spontaneity in.
And in this prison, Jane projected all evil onto the mother.
Seth says the mother mocked him, dared him to kill her physically. That is just dark.
It's incredibly traumatic. You have a child with a basically kind nature who feels this intense aggression toward the mother because of the abuse, but obviously can't act on it. So the ego creates an overguarding mechanism.
It clamps down. It says, I must control myself at all costs because if I lose control, I might hurt her or she might destroy me.
It views any spontaneity as fundamentally dangerous. Because if the child is spontaneous, they might lash out. So spontaneity equals danger.
So being good means being rigid, being controlled, being absolutely quiet.
And this followed Jane right into adulthood. Seth says she was constantly told to slow down, to use discipline. This reinforced the fear that what he was fearful, powerful, evil, and best hidden.
That is heartbreaking, to truly believe that your natural spontaneous self is evil and best hidden.
And that completely explains the war on treats. If you believe your inner self is evil, why would you buy it a sweater? Why would you feed it? You try to starve it. You try to discipline it into submission.
Yeah.
You treat it like a dangerous prisoner.
But the inner self doesn't just quietly go away. It fights back. And this leads to one of the strangest and most compelling parts of the entire session, segment 5, the fake disease.
This is where we see the incredibly sophisticated, if misguided, strategy of the human psyche. Jane began developing symptoms of arthritis, the exact same disease her mother had.
Now, logically, this makes zero sense. Why on earth would you subconsciously give yourself arthritis, the very thing that crippled the person you feared the most?
Seth explains it perfectly, with a twisted kind of survival logic. He says if he becomes the mother, then the mother cannot hurt him.
Identification with the aggressor.
Exactly. It's a very primitive defense mechanism. I am safe from the monster if I am the monster. If I have her disease, I have become her. And you can't be attacked by something you are.
But Seth is very firm here. He differentiates this from actual biological disease. He says, and this is a quote I definitely want to highlight, he does not have arthritis, although he has been mimicking the symptoms and could in time hypnotize himself into believing he did have the disease.
It's a mimicry. It's a performance put on by the subconscious. The symptoms are real in the sense that they hurt, but they aren't rooted in biological decay yet. They are rooted in a psychological play.
But the body, the spontaneous self, is not having it.
No, not at all. The spontaneous self is the true hero of this story.
I love the character of the spontaneous self in this session.
It is brilliant. Seth says the spontaneous self is basically more powerful and far more sensible than the ego.
More sensible than the ego. We usually think the ego is the sensible one, right? The planner, the logic guy. But Seth says the ego is playing these silly psychological games, building prisons and faking diseases, and the spontaneous self is like, I'm not going to be crippled just so you can feel safe from your mother.
Right. It would much rather cause an explosion, an emotional outburst, a temper tantrum, a screaming match, than let the body become permanently crippled. It revolts against the fake disease. The tension Jane felt, the anger, was the spontaneous self trying to break the safe circle that had become a coffin.
Seth also mentions yoga here, which I found so interesting. Jane had been doing yoga, which you generally think is a good thing. It's relaxing, it's physical.
It started as helpful, but Seth says she completely distorted it. She turned yoga into just another form of severe discipline, another way to restrict and control the body rather than liberate it.
It's amazing how we can turn literally anything into a weapon against ourselves. Even yoga.
Even yoga, if the core intention is, I must fix my broken evil self, then even the most spiritual practice becomes a cage. If you do yoga to discipline your unruly body, you are just reinforcing the war against yourself.
So we have a pretty grim picture here. Compulsive roots, self-denial, fake arthritis, and a repressed inner child. But Seth doesn't leave them there. He actually offers a way out. Segment 6, the prescription.
Fun is medicine. It
Right.
sounds overly simplistic, but given the depth of the problem, it's actually
Right.
radical.
Yes. Seth gives some very practical advice. First up is physical activity.
But note this specific type of activity. He explicitly warns against grueling exercise to punish the body. He doesn't want her running marathons to beat the weakness out. He suggests quick activity of a game variety in the yard. Playing, badminton, catch something light, something that engages the body without the heavy hand of discipline, something that has no purpose other than pure joy.
He also says to plan a vacation.
Discuss them so that the idea is a reality in the present. It gives the mind something to actually look forward to, a signal that pleasure is coming. It breaks that emergency treat cycle.
And then there's the bit about the stairs. He tells Jane to go out, even if it's just down the stairs and around the yard. But he analyzes the symbolism of the stairs in a really, really interesting way.
This is fascinating. Dream symbolism applied straight to waking life. For Jane, going down represented fear to the ego, the fear of going deep into the self, into the subconscious basement where the scary monsters and the mother issues live.
But going up was reassuring.
Going up is the intellect, the head, moving away from the messy body. So Seth says to use the stairs. Go down, go out, break the pattern. It's about physically traversing that transitional point between the safe inside and the scary outside. Again, bringing the intention to a sense level. By walking down the stairs, she is proving to herself that she can descend and survive.
And finally, he offers a psychic tool to replace the old one. Remember that fear circle from childhood? The one that kept bad things out but locked bad things in.
Seth offers a replacement for it. He suggests imagining a circle of psychic safety.
How is this one different, though? Isn't a circle just a circle?
The intention is entirely different. He says to imagine a circle through which only constructive suggestions and influences can pass.
It's a filter, not a wall.
Exactly. It's semi-permeable. It's about protection, not repression. It allows for flow. It lets the good in. It lets the neutral in. It only blocks the destructive. The old circle was all about hiding. This circle is about discerning.
That is a crucial distinction to make. One is built on fear, the other on discrimination and confidence.
And the ultimate goal of all this, the cleaning, the playing, the circle, is to coax the spontaneous self back out into the open, to let it breathe, to let it finally buy the sweater.
It really all comes back to the sweater, doesn't it?
It does. That sweater represents the validity of your own desires. It represents the belief that you're allowed to have things just because you want them, not because you earned them through suffering.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, I want to recap for you. What are the big takeaways here?
First, your environment totally reflects your mind. Cleaning can be a ritual to clear out negative thoughts if you do it with that specific intention. Second, self-denial is not a virtue. It can be a form of self-attack that makes you physically ill. Third, if you feel an impulse for a treat, a reasonable, happy impulse, and you crutch it with guilt, you're telling your soul it isn't worthy. And finally, the body knows the truth. It will rebel against your psychological games. If you try to play fake arthritis to feel safe, your body will fight back because it inherently wants to be well.
It's a really powerful lesson. Spontaneity is healthy. Guilt is toxic. And sometimes the most spiritual thing you can possibly do is just go buy the thing that makes you smile.
Absolutely. The chase after germs is symbolic, but the chase after joy should be incredibly real.
So I have a question for you, the listener. What is your sweater? What is the treat you are denying yourself right now? And are you denying it because you really can't have it or because you feel you don't deserve it? Are you using discipline as a way to punish an inner part of yourself that just wants to be happy?
That is definitely the question to meditate on. Are you building a wall or are you building a filter?
Before we go, we need to give credit where credit is absolute due. The source material for today's deep dive is, of course, the Seth material, specifically the Early Sessions Book 7.
Published by the New Awareness Network. These books are dense, detailed, and just incredibly rewarding to go through.
If this conversation sparked something in you, and I have a really strong feeling it did, I cannot encourage you enough to go directly to the source. Read the books. Study the Seth material. It is dense, it is surprising, and it is life-changing. We are just scratching the surface here today.
You can find the books and a lot more information at their bookstore at sethcenter.com, the-early-sessions. That's sethcenter.com.
Go check it out, seriously. We've only covered one session out of hundreds. Just imagine what is in the rest of the library.
It's a lifetime of study, really.
And here, a final thought to leave you with. Seth mentioned that Jane's body was mimicking symptoms. It was a lie the mind told the body. But the spontaneous self, the real you, the deep you, wouldn't stand for it. It would rather explode than live a lie. Think about that. Your body, your spirit is constantly fighting for you, fighting for your truth, even when your ego is trying to script a tragedy. You have a powerful ally inside you. Maybe it's time to stop fighting it and start buying it some sweaters.
Well said. Trust your spontaneity.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time. Stay spontaneous.
Goodbye.